have a reasonably well-equipped wood shop, you're likely to have a scroll saw in your wood shop, and you're also likely not to quite know what to do with it. Very often it stands there lonely, unloved, in a corner, gathering dust, when it could be doing all sorts of wonderful things for you. The problem is that when most people think of a scroll saw, they think of projects like this little piece of fretwork that I did when I was just learning how to use the saw. Pretty, but hardly the kind of thing you would say, oh my God, that's gorgeous. And although I've done my best to elevate the status of scrolled projects through my bowls and unusual boxes, many people don't see it as a tool that belongs in a serious woodworker shop. Well, if you've been neglecting your scroll saw, you may have been shortchanging yourself and using other tools that don't do the job as well or as safely. For example, this is the upper divider, will be the upper divider of a kitchen cart, and it'll go into its mating part on the leg, and it gives a nice firm connection. Well, you can cut this on a bandsaw, but a bandsaw is far more dangerous, and particularly when you get your fingers in close, you have to be careful, and the cut, because of the nature of the blade, is not terribly smooth. This is done very easily with a scroll saw where you make one cut, two cuts, and you're done. So this is one excellent use. This dovetail doesn't have any angled cuts, but some angled cuts can be made on the scroll. So not all. There's a limit. You can't do complete conventional dovetail joinery with the scroll saw. But components like this, it's a snap, and you get it nice and smooth, and you have to do very little remedial sanding. Now here's another application of the scroll saw. These are the sides of the aprons of the same cart, and the construction is going to be mortise and tenon, but because of the width of this piece, the tenon, which was cut on the table saw, needs to be divided into two tenons. Now, while taking the piece at the end is not a big deal, and yes, you can do it with a coping saw, you could probably do it with your bandsaw, getting that fidgety inner middle piece is tricky because you want to get close, you don't want to cut into the nice wood that's going to show, but you do have to curve around. And the scroll saw is the ideal tool for this purpose. This was cut on the scroll saw. And as you can see, it's a very nice cut. May need a little remedial tweaking, but you would do that anyway when you're fitting it into the leg. Now, you may say, okay, well, that's fine, but this is a little piece of wood. Can you do it with a larger piece of wood? Well, I'm going to show you with this rear apron just how you would do the cuts and how relatively simple it is. In fact, the hardest job that I had was remembering to cut the pieces with the X's and not cut off the tenons, which becomes very important when you're doing this as a favor to someone and doing them no favors if you just undo all of their good hard work, and especially if there's no extra wood to do recuts. So we're going to go over to the scroll saw, and I'll show you just how that's done using the longer rear apron. To remove the first waist area, I cut along the shoulder from the outside of the piece to the side of the first tenon. I then cut along the side of the tenon to free the waist area. To remove the center waist area, I cut along the inner side of both tenons, cutting from the end of the board to the shoulder. I then made a curved cut from the end of the board to the side of one of the tenons, rotating the wood so that the blade was running along the shoulder when it met the tenon.
remove the waste piece and cut along the shoulder to the side of the other tenon to free the remainder of the waste area. Last, I removed the waste area on the outside of the second tenon, the same way that I did for the first tenon.
Well, here's the finished piece. As you can see, it took very little time, very little effort, and very rudimentary scroll saw skills. If you're afraid of ruining your piece, then you practice some straight cuts, you practice cutting off corners, and it's a very, very quick learning curve. If you're new to thinking this way, I would suggest that you rethink any project that you're going to use your bandsaw for small things like this, and say, would a scroll saw be the better tool of choice? And I think you'll find, regardless of the kind of woodworking that you do, that you'll find meaningful ways to include the scroll saw in your lineup of serious shop tools. The scroll saw is not the sissy saw that I've heard it labeled. It's a serious tool, and particularly if you get a good scroll saw that's well made, that holds its position, that cuts cleanly, that cuts vertically, good quality blades, and I think you'll be grateful that you have it among the bigger, the heftier tools in your shop. Thanks for watching the video. I hope this gives you some ideas on how to use the tool that has been languishing in the corner for too long.